الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى يوم الدين. Tonight will be the first of Safar, the month of Safar. And this month is a month that is, Safar, some say here that it is empty. The Arabic comes from being empty, and that the homes of the Arabs were empty during the month of Safar. And the reason for this being is that there are months of Haram, which are 4 months in the Arabic calendar, from Rajab and Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hajjah and Muharram, that these months, war was not allowed. Self-defense was allowed, but war was not allowed. So right when Safar happens, the month of Safar enters, they would call it the empty Safar, empty because they'd go back to war in that time. Some say this. The months of Haram are actually, some sources say that they came from Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail. And that changed, that they changed the practice of these months a little bit, the Arabs did. But they took originally from Prophet, some say Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail alayhi salam. Some of you probably have heard this, that the month of Safar is a heavy month. It is a month that maybe more calamities can happen in this month. I don't know, has anybody heard of this, that the month of Safar is a heavy month? Maybe there's not really sahih traditions, maybe, about this. A little bit that I looked, or different researchers, they really didn't find maybe one hadith, and maybe it wasn't really strong. So that, there is such a belief, a popular belief about the month of Safar. But what we know about it is, they say the first of Safar is when the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam enters Sham. And that is when they bring the blessed head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in front of the Khalifa at that time. We are talking about the topic of hope. And we said that hope is a belief. It comes back from our iman. And it is, in a way, anticipation of a good event, a desirable event happening. And the more you're sure that that will happen, the more hopeful you are in that event. And it is close to optimism. And it is far from despair. So a hopeful person is one, and it comes about the future, that the future for them is a bright future, a good future. They don't look at now, they're looking at the future. That is what a hopeful person thinks about what is going to happen. But what is the cause of hope? What is the source of hope? Some philosophers say that the source of hope are calamities. And unless these bad events or evil events happen, you won't be able to have hope. Because something bad has to happen, and then you have hope that you will be removed from this calamity. But do you think this is an accurate depiction of hope in Islam? That we have to wait for something bad to happen, so therefore we can have hope that is going to end? No. So when we look at the Islamic beliefs, it helps teach us that hope is everywhere. It doesn't necessarily mean that something bad has to happen for you to have hope. Your life can be perfect, and still you need hope in order to have a good action. So every action Every good thing that happens, hope is inside of that action. And it is like an engine of a car. Without that hope, we believe that nothing will happen. When you look at some of the traditions, and you see, for example, mentioned about hope. From Imam Ali alayhi salam, from the Imam we have Imam Ali, فَإِنَّ كُلَّ رَاجٍ طَالِبٍ وَكُلُّ خَائِفٍ هَارِبٍ. For verily every hopeful person is a seeker. So what is a seeker? Someone that goes out and performs actions, seeks something. وَكُلُّ خَائِفٍ هَارِبٍ. Harib is a fleer, someone that runs away. And everyone that is afraid runs away. So from this you understand that hope, inside hope, intertwined with hope, is action, actually. So therefore, a person that is hopeful is going to act more. A person that has fear is not going to act, is going to run away, is going to be afraid of things. So the source of hope, we said, the mansha, or the source of hope, is not necessarily bad events, for those bad events to happen. It is, the source of hope can be, we can say, that optimism that we have, that faith, and the more higher that hope is, the more tawakkul, and the more we rely on God. And every good event, everything that we seek, there needs to be hope, because that's why you seek it. That's why you strive, because there's hope in your mind that that action will be, you'll reach it. If you do not have hope, then you won't try. How, we talked about Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and we said that, the lesson of Ashura, one of the great lessons in Ashura, is having hope amidst such trials and tribulations that were unparalleled in history. Such numbers that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was outnumbered heavily to 72 or 100 and something against 30,000. And you see that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was extremely hopeful. And the companions of Imam Hussein and Ahlul Bayt in the month of Safar also. You see Imam Zayn al-Abidin, who was his martyrdom in the 25th of Muharram, which is, we have some of the narrations, he was hopeful as well. And he never lost hope. That the caravan of Imam Hussein, no matter how it was, they continued to push forward, even though the Shia were maybe a handful at that time, maybe only 5. But they didn't say, okay, now that everyone is martyred, Imam Zayn al-Abidin didn't say, okay, that's it, it's over. They killed everyone, it's over. He continued to remember Imam Hussein. One of the interesting narrations we have is that Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam had one of the first majlis for Imam Hussein. When you look at the history of Shi'ism, who is the only Imam that we had majlis for, gatherings for? Imam Hussein. We don't have necessarily history that every year, annually or whatever, that we commemorate other Imams. We don't have that, as far as I know. Not that those are bad. Those are things that we later on did, and it's in the same way that you remember, you honor, they are the symbols of God. They are this ta'zeem of sha'a'ir is something good because they're the symbols of Islam. But the majlis that we had in Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam remembered the most, or even had majlis, was for Imam Hussein. And you see Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam in some of the narrations that the ladies of Bani Hashim would wear black. And this is in hadith. Some ask, why do you wear black? And it's in hadith that they would wear black, so sawad, they would wear black, and they would remember Imam Hussein, and Imam Zayn al-Abidin would bring for them food. Would bring food. So it's like a majlis like we have today. So therefore, he never had despair after Ashura. He continued remembering Imam Hussein, continuing causing Imam Hussein alayhi salam to be in the hearts of the believers. Even though his imamate, lasted for about 34 years, and he became one of those that cried the most. But his cries were not equal to despair. His cries were for Imam Hussein. And Imam Hussein, whoever cries for Imam Hussein actually gains more hope, because you're crying for Islam. You're crying for connecting to God. You're, as we said, nafasul mahmum lidhulmina tasbih. That crying and that grief is glorification of Allah, is a remembrance of God. So therefore you see that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, in the trials and tribulations that they had, like Imam Sajjad, he never had despair, which was, we said, is the opposite of hope. And that he did something in these 34 years, taught slaves, freed slaves. And that sometimes you see that he would, if hadith is not allowed for him to teach, he would take those in a very creative way. He would take the mafahim and ma'arif and the knowledge of Islam and put it inside dua and supplication and teach it to the people. He found another way. If they block this method, because when you're hopeful, they block one method for you to spread Islam, you find another way. You find another path. That is what a hopeful person does. So we learn from Imam Sajjad alayhi salam that he continued the remembrance of Imam Hussein, continued strengthening the Shia, that from a handful in 34 years, they become hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 or so. That they become students of Imam Baqir later on. They become students of Imam Sadiq. Where did these students come from? A lot of them were the freed slaves of Imam Zainul Abidin. So you see that when you look at our own lives and you see how to be hopeful, you learn from the seerah of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam that regardless of your circumstance, and our circumstance can never be as hard as Imam Zainul Abidin's circumstance, that you find another method, you find something else, you never give up. Because your trust in is Allah. Remember we said when you have very high hope, that's equal to tawakkul. What does tawakkul mean? Relying on God. Meaning giving your affairs, giving wakala to God. He is my wakil. I'm going to give these affairs to Him. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Because we said that faith or hope is mixed with about the future. I don't know what the future will bring. But I know I have a caring God, a good God, a powerful God. And I know that I trust this affair with Him, that He will take care of me, just as He has taken care of me so greatly and so compassionately in this, say, 30, 40, 50, 60 years that I have lived. A person asks, how hopeful can we be? How hopeful should we become? And we'll end with this hadith, that there are two attributes here that we really need to develop. One is to be, someone that is truly has, raji, or someone that has a raja, true hope, and it is still weak in our community, to have so much hope that from nothing, great things happen, for example. And the other thing is khawf. We need to develop khawf, fear of God. So Imam Ali alayhi salam gives us, a very nice way, a nice formula to live our lives, and I'll end with this hadith from him, that this is how hopeful you should be. Leaving this majlis, leaving this gathering from tomorrow, I want you to think this way, so positively, be such an optimist. That Imam Ali in hadith says, Kun lima la tarju, arja minka lima tarju. Be hopeful in the unexpected, that thing that you don't have hope, more hopeful than that thing that is expected to happen. Right? For example, I don't expect certain things to happen in my life. I say, it's impossible. I should be so hopeful in that thing. That same thing that I think will never happen. That same thing that I think is so hard for it to happen. It can't happen. Be more hopeful in that you don't expect, than that thing that is obvious and is going to be, you have hope that it's going to, for example, be fulfilled. And he gives 3 examples of this. So remember, this hadith is about being more hopeful in the unexpected, more than the expected. How does that work? How much hope does that need for you to have more hope in the unexpected? First example, he says, فَإِنَّ مُوسَى بْنَ عِمْرَانَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامَ خَرَجَ يَقْتَبِسْ لِأَهْلِهِ نَارًا فَكَلَّمَهُ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فَرَجَعَ نَبِيًّا. Musa alayhi salam, in the story where he comes to meet God and speak with him, it wasn't like a meeting that we have today, for example, in our reminders that come, you have a meeting at this time, alarm comes or whatever, it's this time, this hour. He was going to get fire. He was going to get fire, for some say, for his wife that was pregnant because she was cold. So he goes to get fire. So he's hoping, what is his hope? I want you to use this formula here. He has hope and fire, right? Fire. I'm going to go look for some wood. Maybe I'll get something to start a nice fire with. The unexpected here is meeting God and becoming a prophet. The unexpected thing, to go and become a prophet suddenly. He goes to get fire, but the unexpected, something that we imagine would be, that he comes back, he becomes Kalimullah. He speaks with God and has a conversation with God, and some of it is recorded in the Holy Quran. He actually speaks as a conversation with God, and of course through a medium, not that God has a voice. God uses a medium to speak with him, and he comes back a fire as a prophet. So he leaves to get fire, but he comes back as a prophet. So Imam Ali gives this example to be more hopeful in that thing that is unexpected, that you think you can never happen to me, something very great. Have more hope, in the bottom of your heart in that. And we'll talk about it. I was going to talk about it because the timing is in a way that, we don't have much time. Hopefully next week, we'll talk about it is that belief in God, that iman in God, faith in God that causes you to be so hopeful. Because if you understand God, then you will be hopeful. If you don't understand him, you cannot be hopeful. You cannot trust him anymore. Second example, so the first example, if I ask you tomorrow or next week, what is the first example I gave about being extremely hopeful? One is the example of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. He went to get fire, came back as a prophet. The second example, وَخَرَجَتْ مَلِكَةُ السَّبَأِ فَأَسْلَمَتْ مَعَ سُلَيْمَانَ alayhi salam. The Queen Sheba came and was worried and threatened by Prophet Sulaiman's vast kingdom. She had a kingdom of herself, for herself. And she comes to speak. Prophet Sulaiman writes a letter, she writes a letter, and there's a letter written, and she comes to speak with him. And when she comes to speak with him, Prophet Sulaiman brings her throne. She comes to speak with him. Oh, there's a throne there. What's going on? How did they bring my throne so fast? Second, there's a palace made out of glass. It impresses her. Palace made out of glass. So she converts and becomes a monotheist. She becomes Muslim. The best thing that can happen to anyone is to become Muslim, to have iman. So her hope was to have peace with Prophet Sulaiman, so that he wouldn't threaten her empire. That was what she had hoped. Maybe if I come to speak with him, he'll leave me alone. But yet she goes and becomes a follower of Prophet Sulaiman. She becomes a Muslim, something much more greater than she can even think. Ma la tarja, it says, tarju. That thing that she didn't even expect happened. She became a Muslim. The third example, and we'll start, preparing for Salat, inshallah, is وَخَرَجَ سَحَرَةُ فِرْعَوْنَ يَطْلَبُونَ الْعِزَّةَ لِفِرْعَوْنَ فَرَجَعُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. The sorcerers in the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, they wanted to impress who? The Pharaoh, right? The Pharaoh was their Rabb. He was the one that gave money to them, fed them. That's how they thought. That the Rabb, their Lord, was the Pharaoh. So imagine doing something to Prophet Musa alayhi salam and you annihilate, his reputation. And you do sorcery and you impress Pharaoh. How much money would he give? How great would it be? So they had hope in impressing the Pharaoh, but they didn't have hope that they would become a believer. And then when they came in this competition, and Musa alayhi salam performed a miracle, not sorcery, he performed a miracle and didn't make things look like, for example, they change. He actually, performed the miracle. They became believers. They become mu'mins. So they received that thing that they didn't even expect. And what happens when they're a believer now? After they die, the death of a believer, there will be Jannah and heaven will be waiting for them, right? So therefore, that thing that they didn't even expect, didn't even cross their mind, I'm going to challenge Musa, I'm going to get some money maybe from Pharaoh. Did I come back as a follower of Musa alayhi salam, a believer of Musa? So from this tradition, we understand that this is the maximum. In this, I want you to judge yourselves tonight to see, do you have this much hope in your lives that the unexpected is actually more closer to you? Do you have more hope in it than the expected? That God will treat you in a way way better, in other ways, than your imagination can even think, that your mind can even consider. That He will provide for you and He will make your life so beautiful, way better than you could even imagine. This is the amount of hope that the believer should have. And hopefully if we have this amount of hope, we will live good lives. We'll be relaxed, we'll be calm, we'll have enjoyment in our lives. But if, God forbid, we lose hope, then we're going to have a wretched life. We're going to have a miserable life. So inshallah, from now on, let's trust God, and He is the best of planners, and He wants the best for us, and hopefully we can be true believers. We can dim the lights, and I'll say something about Imam Hussein alayhi salam, because it's the month of Safars. We continue crying for Imam Hussein. Remember, if anyone asks you, why do you cry so much for Imam Hussein alayhi salam? Sometimes they put comments in some of my videos on social media. They say, okay, crying for Imam Hussein, but why so long? Why for 40 days? Why do you cry for 40 days? Okay, 1 day, 2 days, whatever. The answer is Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam. You have in Sunni sources and Hilyatul Awliya that Imam Zainul Abidin cried so much, years, cried so much for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that when asked, he mentioned the story of Prophet Yaqub and said, Yaqub cried for Yusuf, and the hadith has 20 years. 20 years he cried for his son that he knew was alive because he missed his son, because he wanted his son to come back. 20 years until he became blind. But in front of me, 12, 14 members of my family in front of me were martyred. In front of me. Prophet Yaqub cried 20 years and became blind for Yusuf alayhi salam. Eventually, he saw again. He met up again. But Imam Zain al-Abidin, another Yusuf, in terms of beauty and in terms of Kamal, Hussein Abi Abdullah, was martyred in front of him, and his head was taken with him, his holy head, from Kufa to Sham. And in such a time period now is the time where finally they bring the head of Imam Hussein, the blessed head with Imam Zain al-Abidin and Lady Zainab, to the throne of Yazid. How do you think Imam Zain al-Abidin was feeling? How was Lady Zainab feeling when they bring the bloody head of Imam Hussein with a plate, on a plate? And they play, I apologize, they play with his lips, with a stick, with a bamboo stick. So Imam Zain al-Abidin became one of the great criers of the world, one of the 4 people that cried the most. And every time he saw water, every time he would see an animal slaughter, they say that he would remember his father, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. May Allah give us patience, inshallah. May Allah give us hope and faith. May Allah accept our majlis and remembering for Imam Hussein. So if someone asks us, why do you remember Imam Hussein so long? You tell them Shia or Sunni. You tell them Imam Zain al-Abidin, who's a great figure in Islam, cried so much for Imam Hussein, so therefore we are allowed. Prophet Yaqub cried so much for Prophet Yusuf, and God did not say anything that this is haram or this is bad. May Allah, inshallah, make us of the hopeful. May Allah make us, inshallah, optimistic. May Allah help us in our endeavor that we are purchasing this building, inshallah, and we'll be able to establish a large home, a large place for the believers. May Allah give us and allow us to help out in this great cause, that in the day of judgment we wish that we gave one brick, one piece of drywall, one little amount for this building, because it will be flowing, ever-flowing sadaqah for us, charity for us. May Allah bless the souls of the marhumeen, make them have, inshallah, the reward of this majlis. May Allah answer all of your du'as, cure all those that are sick, feed all those that are hungry, give protection to all those that need protection, and make us a sincere companion of the Imam of the age, make him satisfied with us, and may Allah expedite his return with his salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.